In 1836, the Northwest is still out of reach for Americans east of the Mississippi River. But when missionaries and their wives cross the Rockies by wagon, this faraway place suddenly becomes real. In September, Marcus and Narcissa Whitman establish a mission in the Walla Walla Valley to work among the Nez Perce and Cayuse. They also establish that the difficult journey across the Rockies can be done with wagons and women.
Oregon and the Oregon country had taken on the aura of an Edenic place, a place where there was the possibility for not just a renewal of economic opportunity, but also a renewal of psychic, even spiritual opportunity for American people.
The Whitmans' route to the Northwest attracts others. Instead of Lewis and Clark's Missouri trek, travelers follow the Platte River to South Pass, where they safely cross the Rockies. Once across the Continental Divide, they travel along the Snake River Basin, cross the Blue Mountains to the Columbia. They call it the Oregon Trail. The missionaries help the newcomers. The Whitmans' mission becomes more of a resting place for weary Oregon Trail travelers than a place to save souls.
The Christian life did take away a lot of our culture. It took away the respect we had for the opposite sex, for the elder people.
In 1843, Marcus Whitman himself leads a wagon train of more than 1,000 people in what becomes known as the Great Migration. 350,000 Americans will make the 2,000-mile wagon trip west over the next 20 years.
They're not going on this horrible trek to a place where they're going to experience even harsher conditions of living than they've left. No, they're going to a place that's going to relieve them of many of the travails that they were experiencing.
The settlers have an immediate impact. In 1843, an Oregon provisional government is created. Free land is given to the newcomers, and word of an American promised land spreads east.
It soon became a competition for settlement. I would say about, well, even as early as 1830 or so, they were having societies back in Boston, for instance, that would, for the settlement of Oregon, and they would tell how that not only was this a land overflowing with flowing with milk and honey, it was overflowing with milk and honey, and of course it's just nothing at all to get across the plains and get here.
In 1846, joint occupancy of the Columbia River Basin ends, and the 49th parallel becomes the border between the United States and the British Northwest. 6,000 Americans now live in Oregon country. By November of 1847, 69 white people live at the Whitmans' mission. The Cayuse resent this growing white community on their lands, and as an epidemic of black measles spreads, the resentment grows. Whitman, a doctor as well as a minister, treats as many of the dying Cayuse as he can. It is the code of the Cayuse that when a medicine man fails, he may lose his own life. Dr. Whitman continues to treat the sick.
You know, a lot of people call it a massacre, but it wasn't a massacre. What should have been termed a massacre is the diseases that massacre our people. But they don't call that a massacre. What we did was protecting our remaining families and tribe and peoples.
On November 29th, 60 Cayuse warriors come to Whitman's house. One warrior kills Dr. Whitman with a hatchet that splits his skull. Narcissa is shot, dragged outside, and beaten to death. When the Whitman massacre ends, 14 people are dead. 51 whites are taken by the Cayuse, and the Columbia River Basin fills with terror.